morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are in week 14 of the musical course, and today I'd like to draw your attention to the question of children. That is musicals for children, musicals with children, and the combination of the two, basically. So musicals with children and for children. I hope you have seen some version of Annie and Matilda. We'll return to these two examples in a little while, but I think this is again a very broad subject, and we need to acknowledge at least the other possible treatments of this theme. So first of all, musicals for children. There are lots of musicals for children. If you look at it, for example, the whole subcategory of Disney musical is predominantly some sort of family entertainment. It was designed to be family entertainment. So these are musicals definitely with child audiences in mind. If we look at all kinds of animated films for children, especially longer animated films, feature animated films, they most often include music, so they could be called film musicals. Not only the works by Disney company, but other very successful things. For example, I know The Prince of Egypt, which is a biblical story, which could be again discussed in our topic of religion. But then again, it's an animated movie, and it's aimed at families. Even if we stick to the stage musical, there are lots of interesting examples here. Speaking of Disney, we have Lion King, the quasi-Shakespearean blockbuster. We have Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, Mary Poppins, and so on and so forth, and very many Disney musicals have been brought to stage later on. We have classical fairy tales such as Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella. Actually, right now, Andrew Lloyd Webber is apparently working on his own version of Cinderella. So again, we have a classical fairy tale. We have the musicalization of films which were not musicals initially. Perhaps the best example would be Shrek. And then there was a Harry Potter musical, and they do not as a rule feature a child protagonist. In Disney musicals, the protagonists are rarely children. Well, perhaps in Lion King we have this lion cub, but if we look at Beauty and the Beast, if we look at the Little Mermaid, if we look at Cinderella as well, the main characters are young people, but not exactly children. And these musicals function as traditional fairy tales do. So they tend to be quite conservative. If you look at their, let's say, ideological content, they like Lion King or Beauty and the Beast, for example, they teach children to accept their duties in life with a smile, to be obedient. Lion King, absolutely. Also, very often it features the theme of a woman finding validation through a relationship with a man. If we look at The Little Mermaid, if we look at Beauty and the Beast, if we look at Cinderella, for all the positive sides, of course there are lots of positive sides to all fairy tales, but it can also be seen as a rather sad reminder to girls in the audience that to be a woman you need a man, and this will validate you, this will make you into a human being. In the case of The Little Mermaid, literally, it will make you into a human being rather than an animal. So that's really one type. Of course, the very best example in this category, so fairy tale musicals, musicals for children audience but not really featuring child protagonists, is Sometimes Into the Wood. This is perhaps the best fairy tale musical ever, especially that Sondheim was inspired by a very classic theoretical book about the fairy tales by Bruno Bettelheim, The Uses of Enchantment. This was one of the groundbreaking works of, let's say, cultural studies, treating fairy tales as very important means of cultural transmission. So the ideology, the impact of fairy tales on children's development. What we have is, I think I mentioned it when we talk about Stephen Sondheim. I still strongly advise you to watch it if you have time, especially the stage version, which has a very clear division into Act 1, which is basically a classical rendition of a mashup of a few fairy tales meant for children and treated in a more or less classical way. And then Act 2, which puts it on its head and makes it into a very allegorical tale for adults mostly, because it starts dealing with adult themes, and it doesn't end with they lived happily ever after. Not so easy, and the supposed happy endings are not that happy in the long run. So this is something that Sondheim admitted in one of the interviews, that he thought that the first act of Into the Woods could be staged by schools, and this is something which is very popular, especially in the United States. We have schools, mostly secondary schools, having drama clubs and doing musicals. So they sometimes take classical musicals, and Into the Woods is a very popular choice. So with younger children, you can do the first act, and with slightly more mature teenagers, you can then do the second act. So that's one thing. The musicals with child audience in the background, so aimed for family entertainment. These could be things, fantastical things like, let's say, Starlight Express by Andrew Lloyd Webber, or any kind of fairy tales, traditional or modern. But of course, by far, this is not the only way that children and musicals mix. And we continue in a moment.